From the constantly changing structure and pace to Lucasfilm turning into the MCU, these are the biggest problems in the Mandalorian series. When The Mandalorian first began airing on Disney+, many fans were happy about the show and the direction it was going. That was then, this is now. And now Star Wars fans aren't too happy with what the show's become. There are more than a few problems with The Mandalorian, particularly the latest season of the show, Season 3. One of the show's biggest issues became incredibly problematic in the third season, and it all has to do with how the episodes are structured. For the most part, much of The Mandalorian's episodes deal with different stories, and often different planets, each episode. So each week, Star Wars fans can tune in to watch a different story that almost always comes to some sort of satisfying conclusion by the end of that same episode. In this way, The Mandalorian takes inspiration from another great science fiction show, Star Trek. Though much of the series deals with these types of episodic moments, the show does also rely on larger season-building arcs that can be dealt with among these episodic moments. But more often than not, in the last 2 seasons of the show, The Mandalorian has begun to rely more on these serialized episodes that follow a season-long arc or story, rather than the episodic ones that made the show great in Season 1. As a result, many fans have been turned off by The Mandalorian in Season 3, particularly because many feel that the show's best episodes are the episodic ones, rather than the serialized story-building ones. Other fans, on the other hand, feel differently and think the serialized episodes are better. Regardless of which version of the show fans prefer, one thing is clear: the overall pacing and story structure of the last season were off. The show continues to go back and forth between what it wants to be. Does it want to be as it was in Season 1, with mainly episodic episodes, different planets and different stories every week? Or does it want to continue to follow one major storyline all season, eliminating these Planet of the Week type stories? It seems as though The Mandalorian doesn't know what it wants to be, which leads us to the next huge problem with the series. The show has become incredibly annoying for fans after the second season. And Season 3 has proven that The Mandalorian has made some huge mistakes when it comes to its overall storytelling. At the end of the Season 2 finale, The Mandalorian, Din Djarin, had to say goodbye to Grogu, aka Baby Yoda, and fans were thrilled to see Luke Skywalker return to the show to take Grogu off to teach him the ways of the Jedi. While it was clearly sad to see Din Djarin and Grogu say goodbye, and while Grogu had become such a huge part of the show, this goodbye was sad yet needed. Fans were quick to be surprised when Season 3 began, and Baby Yoda was back with The Mandalorian as if nothing had happened at all. Fans had to tune into the Book of Boba Fett to see how this happened, and why Grogu returned to Din Djarin, as this storyline didn't play out in The Mandalorian. But the reason this storytelling moment is a huge issue is because the emotional weight that the Season 2 finale had was immediately wiped away by the time Season 3 picked up. The sadness we all felt watching Din Djarin and Grogu go their separate ways meant nothing, as they were reunited in another TV show before Season 3 even dropped. In Season 3, The Mandalorian has become problematic in rewriting stories that previously worked and had a lot of emotional weight attached to them. There are many reasons why Grogu was brought back, though most fans seem to assume that Lucasfilm didn't want to lose Baby Yoda, and therefore lose the way they could continue to profit off Baby Yoda toys, merchandise, and more. But fans watching the show have become annoyed, as every sad or bad thing that happens on the show can now just be written away, and that makes the show and the stories the showrunners are telling a bit pointless. This could have more to do with how Lucasfilm is running the Star Wars show. Another huge problem with The Mandalorian is likely because of Lucasfilm and their control of all Star Wars property. But Lucasfilm is creating countless flaws in the plot of The Mandalorian, all because they want to continue to tell connected stories in the Star Wars universe. We've already mentioned before how The Mandalorian has changed from episodic stories that conclude at the end of each episode to more serialized storytelling. This could be because of Lucasfilm's influence, and the fact that they want to set up more stories set in the same era as The Mandalorian. When the show's first season first aired, it was a standalone Star Wars show. Though it was set in a time frame that many Star Wars fans know about, the show was really marketed for the casual Star Wars fan rather than the diehard. But that's not to say that diehard fans couldn't enjoy the show, as many did. Once everyone saw Baby Yoda, the show became a phenomenon. But it was because viewers who had never seen Star Wars could watch the show and still understand the gist of things. That has since changed with Season 2 and mainly Season 3, which is another huge issue for The Mandalorian. Lucasfilm, which obviously wants to continue creating successful Star Wars movies and TV shows, saw the great reception that The Mandalorian received and wanted to increase this success as much as possible. But now, the casual viewer who isn't completely immersed in Star Wars lore may struggle with the events of the show. It's no longer for casual viewers, and the plots have failed as a result. If the plots aren't aimless and pointless because of that lack of emotional weight that sticks, then the plots are instead incredibly difficult for casual fans to understand. Now, with Season 3, many fans need to watch previous Star Wars TV shows, mainly the animated shows, to truly feel as if they know what's going on. A show for the casual fan has now become something more dedicated for Star Wars fans in the know. While small callbacks to the animated Star Wars shows, such as the Clone Wars or Rebels, are fine in small doses, creating a whole third season out of these shows is a bit too much. After all, let's remember how this show started, as a fun little sci-fi western. That's all. Now it's become something else entirely, and that leads me to the last yet most pivotal problem that The Mandalorian has. Everything has begun to tie together. For a show that was touted as a standalone Star Wars show when it was first created, this isn't good. In many ways, Lucasfilm is making the Star Wars movies and TV shows similar to the MCU. Just about every single MCU movie ties into the next, which creates a cohesion that can be fun, but that can also alienate those casual viewers that just want one fun thing to watch, rather than multiple TV shows and movies they have to watch to understand what's going on. Unfortunately, it seems that this is one problem that The Mandalorian will not fix anytime soon. Even though it's become one of the biggest complaints of Season 3, Lucasfilm has already announced that much of Ahsoka and future Star Wars projects will connect to the future seasons of The Mandalorian. There will also be a movie that will combine these shows and wrap up the stories that are told in these various TV shows, which feels an awful lot like something the MCU does. While the MCU has benefited from this cohesion, it has also begun to fail lately, simply because the average casual viewer doesn't want to have to watch all these shows and movies to understand one film's plot. Now it appears that Star Wars and The Mandalorian are heading in this direction, which is a real shame, especially because The Mandalorian was a great show on its own, without all of this aimless, convoluted storytelling that appeared in Season 3. When The Mandalorian finally ends, fans shouldn't have to watch a whole other movie to get the conclusion to the story that began with Season 1. But with the way Lucasfilm is heading, it appears that this will happen, and this will almost surely turn off the casual viewer that watched the show and made it a hit in the first place. So from Lucasfilm becoming more like the MCU, to the overall pacing and structure of the seasons, these were the biggest problems in the Mandalorian series.